May the love that breathes life into all humanity be born in us today. Amen. Please be seated. My husband and I usually have a classical music radio station playing in the background when we are doing work around the house. The station we listened to when we lived in DC began playing Christmas music every year on the morning after Thanksgiving. They increased the percentage of Christmas to non-Christmas music over the course of December, so that by mid-December or so, they were playing Christmas music pretty much 24/7. Now, I'm no Scrooge. I love listening to Christmas music. I love singing Christmas carols. I have favorite pieces that I look forward to each year to hear, to sing. However, this radio station had a very limited library from which it chose its holiday music. So by the week of Christmas, we were hearing the same pieces over and over and over again. And of course, we've been hearing them since the beginning of December. So as a result, I often found myself tuning these pieces out, even though they were hymns and carols I loved. Whenever they were broadcast, they were just too familiar. And today's passage from the Gospel according to Luke is a little like that Christmas music on the radio station. It's a story we hear every year at Christmas, and we hear over a number of different ways in December. It's read at church on Christmas Eve. Linus recites it on the stage in A Charlie Brown Christmas. It's sung in the arias, recitatives, and choruses of Handel's Messiah. And it's referenced in every nativity scene we see. And because this story is so familiar, because we think we already know it, it is just really easy to tune out its message, just as I would tune out those Christmas carols on that radio station. But this gospel is amazing. It deserves our close attention. When faced with a story we know really well, we can forget how amazing it really is. So it is important for us to really hear this story from Luke's gospel. And one way to do that is to look at it from a different perspective. So we're going to look at it from the shepherd's point of view. What can their part in this story tell us about God? So let's begin by imagining what that first Christmas Eve might have been like for those shepherds. It probably began like any other evening. Perhaps as the darkness was falling, they were rushing to get the sheep to a place where they could be safely kept overnight. They would have spent time making sure the sheep had adequate food and water. Someone would have built a fire for warmth and to keep the predators away. Others would have prepared and served the evening meal. Maybe they told stories or sang after dinner. Perhaps they watched the flocks in shifts so that all had some time to sleep. So on that rather ordinary, maybe even kind of boring evening, as the shepherds were going about their usual affairs, all of a sudden, the shepherds had an incredible manifestation of God. An angel of the Lord stood before them. There was light as God's glory shone all around them. The host of heaven appeared, praising God. The shepherds became the first to hear the good news. They were the first to learn that Jesus, the Messiah, the Lord, was born in Bethlehem. These shepherds, who were at the bottom rungs of the social ladder, were chosen to be the first to receive the good news of God's birth. It was not wealthy or well-educated or powerful people who were given that important message of the angels. No, God chose ordinary, modest people who had no earthly power or social standing for this revelation. Here, as throughout the Bible, Luke demonstrates God's preference for the weak, the poor, and the vulnerable. And then just as suddenly, the angels left the shepherds after delivering their message. The shepherds were again alone on that dark, quiet, ordinary field. Once they were alone, the shepherds talked about what to do next. Notice that the shepherds chose what to do after receiving this incredible message. They decided as a group to go to Bethlehem to see the Holy Child. They were not forced by God or the angels to do that. And in this conversation, Luke reminds us that God always grants us freedom to respond to God's invitation. The shepherds could have said no. They might have decided to stay there in the fields. What if they didn't feel like getting up and going all the way to Bethlehem? What if they had decided to disregard the angel's message? What if they thought it was all in their imagination? What they had just seen and experienced wasn't really God in the heavenly host. But fortunately for us, the shepherds took the angel at his word and chose to go in search of the manger. The shepherds recognized God's presence, trusted their senses, and allowed themselves to believe and be changed by it. So the shepherds traveled with haste to find the Holy Family. And when the shepherds saw Mary, Joseph, and the baby, they made known what had been told them about this child. In doing this, these humble, lowly servants, became messengers of God. They bore witness to the wonder of God choosing to become one of us. And that is indeed wondrous, isn't it? This gospel passage tells us about God choosing to become human, to live on earth, to experience human life in all its richness and limitations. This lets us know that God isn't some remote creator God who made the heavens and earth and then left them alone to do their own thing. Instead, this gospel declares that God is with us. God is involved and engaged with the world God created, so much so that God became one of us. On that first Christmas Eve long ago, a group of shepherds had an unexpected encounter with God. These ordinary, modest people recognized God's invitation in that encounter and accepted it. Because of their yes to God, they bore witness to the miracle of God choosing to become one of us. God invites us too. Naturally, how God encounters us and what God invites us to do will be different from the shepherds, as well as different from one another. Most of us do not receive as glorious and dramatic an invitation as the shepherds did. For most of us, God's invitation begins with a quiet longing, the blossoming of an idea after a loved one's offhand remark. To what is God inviting you? How will you bear witness to the miracle of God becoming one of us? Is it in your prayer life, your relationship with family or friends, through service to others in the community, through making the world more like what God dreams for it? A continuation of what you are already doing? God invites each one of us to be part of God's work in the world, to be a witness to the wonder of God becoming one of us. And each one of us has a choice. of whether to accept it or not. What will you say? Will you, like the shepherds, say yes